I want to start with something personal because it's the reason I can't talk about this topic neutrally. I didn't go to a prestige university. I went to what most rankings would file under mid-tier, and also one that doesn't appear on any of the popular rankings. But here's something that most students never think about. A lot of professors don't have just one job. A lot of them teach two or three institutions at the same time. So the same professor lecturing at the big name university across town, there's a good chance he was standing in my lecture hall that same semester. Same expertise, same depth, same person. I was getting it at a fraction of the cost with a fraction of the debt. That was the first crack in my belief in prestige. The second came later, living in China and working in higher education and watching genuinely talented students filter every decision about where to do their masters through just one metric, the university's rank. Not the curriculum, not the industry connections, not what happens after graduation, just the number next to the university's name. I watch students turn down programs with direct pipelines into the industries they actually wanted in favor of a higher ranked option with none of these connections, purely because the ranking number looked better on paper. What struck me wasn't that they were wrong to care about quality. It's that almost none of them understood the number was never built to measure the thing they assumed it measured. So let's talk about these ranking numbers, and let's talk about why now more than ever, choosing a degree based on prestige might be one of the most expensive decisions you'll ever make. But I also want to be clear about something before I go further. This isn't about villains. Universities, they haven't done anything wrong by being prestigious. Ranking bodies haven't done anything wrong by measuring what they measure. The issue isn't malice, it's a mismatch. It's a mental model that made perfect sense for decades, but simply hasn't caught up to how careers actually work now and will work into the future. So here's the model most students are still running, usually without realizing it. Prestige equals quality, and quality equals opportunity. Climb the rankings ladder, and the rest takes care of itself. But that model was built for a labor market that's disappearing. Employers used to hire on brand because brand was the only signal they had. Degrees were scarce, and elite universities held a monopoly on cutting-edge research and industry access. But today, the fastest growing employers are increasingly hiring on skills, portfolios, and direct experience because that information is now easy to verify and brand is not. The signal has changed, but most students' mental model hasn't. Let's look at how this actually plays out. We'll start with the US because the Ivy League is the clearest example. Look at where hiring is genuinely accelerating, not the glossy consulting and finance roles that a lot of people fixate on, but the things like semiconductor manufacturing, green energy, AI operations, logistics, advanced manufacturing. These sectors are not recruiting from the Ivy League first. They're recruiting from places like Arizona State, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and the University of Texas System. Not because those schools are better in some abstract sense, but because that's where the fabrication plants, the data centers, and the energy corridors physically are. That's where the apprenticeship pipeline already exists. You can't easily build a pipeline from Princeton into a chip plant in Phoenix, but ASU already has one. The UK tells the same story. Everyone talks about Oxbridge and the Russell Group, but if you look past the marketing and into the actual graduate outcomes data, the strongest placement rates in green tech and advanced manufacturing are coming out of places like Strathclyde, Loughborough, and Nottingham Trent. Have you ever even heard of them? So why are they producing in-demand graduates? It's because they sit inside the industrial clusters where work is being created. Offshore wind in Scotland, hydrogen in the Midlands, advanced materials in the Northeast. And meanwhile, London universities keep producing graduates who compete for a small number of roles in an oversaturated city with brutal living costs. Prestige doesn't help much when the industry you actually want is 400 miles away. Mainland Europe pushes this even further. So, for example, Germany's universities of applied sciences consistently outperform the traditional research universities on job placement. Not because they're academically superior, but because they were built for the labor market that actually exists. Students spend large stretches of their degree embedded inside companies. They graduate with 2 years of real experience and often a contract already waiting. For example, at the International School of Management, 60% of students receive full-time job offers even before they finish their last semester. 60%. And this school is a perfect example of how rankings like QS miss institutions that deliver exceptional quality and real career outcomes. Employers don't care that this isn't LMU Munich or Heidelberg. They care that the graduate has already worked on the exact systems they're hiring for. And this isn't a fringe model. It's the dominant approach across Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Austria, and the Nordic countries. Australia follows the same pattern. The group of 8 still carries all the brand recognition, but the strongest employability numbers are coming from universities sitting inside regional tech corridors, places like RMIT, Curtin, and UniSA, because that's where defense, mining technology, and advanced manufacturing are actually expanding. Proximity and practical training are quietly outperforming prestige again. Here's the part that should genuinely concern you. Most students are choosing universities based on a number that has almost nothing to do with employability. Global rankings like QS largely reward research output, citation counts, and international reputation, but none of that directly determines whether you get hired. Employers don't read QS tables before making you an offer. They're asking whether you can do the job. So when I say ranking does not equal better, I mean it literally. Better for what? If your goal is management consulting or high finance, fine. Brand still opens specific doors. But if you're heading into AI, renewable energy, cybersecurity, biotech, logistics, advanced manufacturing, the ranking is close to irrelevant. In some cases, it actually works against you because it pulls you toward institutions and cities that are disconnected from where the actual jobs are. And this is where it gets serious because the cost of getting this wrong compounds quite quickly. It's not just the tuition, it's not the cost of living somewhere expensive, it's the debt you take on before you've even graduated. And that's stacked on top of the opportunity cost of 2 or 3 years in the wrong city, around the wrong employers, competing for the wrong roles. A master's at a big name university will often cost 2 or 3 times more than an equally accredited mid-tier program, one that quite often sits closer to the industry you're actually trying to break into. You're not paying a small premium for the same content. You're financing extra years of distance from the right contacts, while a mid-tier graduate down the road is already working, earning, and building the exact references that you'll need later. That combination of extreme debt plus a degree that's misaligned with where hiring is actually happening is simply one of the worst financial decisions a young person could make. And meanwhile, the mid-tier universities that most students scroll straight past are usually doing the opposite. They're building curricula directly with employers. They're embedding placements and apprenticeships. They're sitting physically inside the regions where demand is growing. They're producing graduates with portfolios, references, and real working experience. And it's at a fraction of the cost and often a fraction of the distance away from the industry that's actually hiring. None of this means that rankings are meaningless or that prestigious universities are somehow bad. It means that the question most people are asking is the wrong one. What's the best university? This is a question built for a job market that doesn't really exist anymore. The better question is, which university sits closest to the industry that I actually want to work in? Because that's almost always where the real opportunity is sitting. The way work happens has changed. Where the jobs are, how hiring decisions get made, what employers actually value when they look at a CV, all of this has shifted. But what hasn't shifted for a lot of people is the mental model they inherited about what a good university means. And that gap is exactly where prestige quietly turns from an asset into a liability. If you're choosing a master's for a career change or to move somewhere new, start with the industry and not the university's ranking. Work backwards from there. The best university is the one closest to the job you want, not the highest one in the rankings. And if you want more of this, evidence over branding, outcomes over marketing, hit subscribe and I'll keep bringing it to you.